and welcome to another Friday Forum Live. I'm Carly and we are streaming live from Point Blank in London in Studio 5. For those of you who are maybe a little less familiar with what we do, we're a music school. We've got courses here in London, LA, Ibiza, online and a new school in Mumbai. We offer all sorts of different courses including DJing, music production, sound engineering, singing, songwriting, radio and all sorts of good stuff. So do head to our website, pointblankmusicschool.com, where you can find out more about our courses. And today is Black Friday, of course, so if you are planning on studying in LA, we've got 40% off all of our PBLA courses until the 28th of November, I think. And today we are joined by a former student of ours, Charlie Kelly,
Hello.
aka Kells. How are you?
I'm good.
This is exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So I know you're a bit of a fan of FFL. So how does it feel to actually be on one?
It's very surreal to have. I've watched so many of them in the past. So yeah, to be on the other side of the lens is awesome. Yeah,
so we're going to be doing a bit of a remix deconstruction today.
Yes.
But firstly, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you studied here, and I guess your experience at Point Blank?
Yeah. So I started I came from like a more musician background.
Okay.
Played like piano from a young age, guitar, drums, and then played in bands around London as I was growing up, and then at uni as well. And then, so I kind of got into production and started listening to more electronic music, and then taught myself a bit of production for maybe like 3-4 years, something like that. And then I was like always thinking about coming here and watching loads of the YouTube videos to sort of try and teach myself.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I felt like I'd reached like a certain point. I was like, I need to come and like.
Were you watching Point
Blank
YouTube videos?
I was watching Point Blank. I was watching a lot of FFLs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wicked.
So yeah.
And so, who would you say are some of your biggest musical influences?
I don't know. I think when I was first getting into electronic music, it was the type of stuff, like the type of like UK stuff that a lot of people like Groove Armada, Chemical Brothers,
yeah,
that sort of stuff. And then like more recently, I listened to like a lot of broken beat, a lot of like techno.
Bit of a raver.
Yeah, sure. yeah, love a bit of a rave. So I listened to kind of all sorts of stuff, but yeah, it's a lot of house, a lot of like Dutch house, and then techno labels like Ilian Tape and all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Amazing. So I was trying to think, was it about 6 months ago that I got in touch with you about this remix?
Yeah,
that
sounds about right. Yeah.
So I mean, we launched our new record label, Point Blank Recordings, and asked you to do a remix.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, what were your initial thoughts when you heard the original AMANI track?
So when I listened through to the whole EP, and when I heard the Transform, which is the intro of it, it's only like 40 seconds long or 40.
Because you selected that track to remix, didn't you?
Yeah, that was right. I think it was like there was a choice of some tracks.
Yeah.
And then I listened to that one, and it was only like 40 seconds long, and it was like pretty much almost an a cappella.
Yeah.
And then it's got some synths and like texture stuff in there. But then I was just like listening to it, and I was like, I wish this was longer. And I was
That's what I
was
thought,
like waiting for the beat to come in, and I was like, and then that made the remix process quite easy because I already had an idea in my head from you literally sending me the track and listening to it.
Okay.
And then I was like, already had an idea before I even sat down, which
Really?
is I think is quite rare for that to happen. And I do like it when that happens, if something just inspires you off the cuff, and then you can sit down and sort of put it into practice.
So did the entire remix flow quite naturally?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there was kind of a few kind of more technical things that were like proved a bit of a niggle along the way, which I'll get into in a minute. But yeah, the whole thing flowed like very naturally, just in terms of recording parts in and writing parts and arranging. Even though arranging usually for me is like a nightmare, but it all flowed really naturally. It was nice.
I mean, I love this mix, and there was so much good press and really good feedback as well, wasn't there? And Accelerator did a free download.
Yes.
So how was that for you? Because this is your second release.
Yeah, second release. So I had the first one through Point Blank Music in the summer, which you got in touch with me about, which is...
we are your fans here at Point Blank. We love you.
So yeah, that was the second release. First remix I've ever done, really, in terms... I've kind of done it for my own sort of pleasure or whatever, or own sort of fun before, but this was the first one I'd done like properly. So yeah, getting stuff like the Accelerator thing was mad, because the Accelerator is another one of those sites that I've just look at all the time for my own music and my own searching of stuff. So to have a track of mine, a remix of mine appear on there was just like, it was crazy. I didn't see any of it coming, and I always think you should expect expect the worst, hope for the best, and yeah, it was great.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So what does the future hold for you? What are your plans?
Plans in music. I'm planning to do a lot more collaboration. I think the sort of collaboration that I did when I was studying here was one of the best things about it, and potentially something that you have to kind of come in with an open mind and work with other people that don't necessarily do the exact genre of music that you do, and then you learn so much about what you're capable of production-wise and what other people can teach you and stuff like that. So I guess the plans are working with like other vocalists, and maybe potentially working with AMANI.
That'd be good.
In the new year, and then there's a few other sort of releases coming out in the new year.
And are you planning on working with other producers as well and musicians, or is it mostly just vocalists?
It's mostly vocalists. There's a friend of mine who I was studying with here, and he was the only person on the exact same course as me, and we got to know each other really well, and we're making some more sort of hardcore techno-y sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Quite different to this remix. So yeah, working with other producers as well to try and just broaden the range, and I think it's great if you work with another producer to get different critical ears.
Absolutely,
and you can be critical of each other, and as long as you're comfortable in doing that, then it can only result in a good thing. So yeah, I'll be doing some of that for sure.
Amazing. Yeah. So should we have a little listen to the remix? Yeah.
Yes. Shall I just play a
20
little?
seconds or so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
A little excerpt. Then what happened?
So, so the way I kind of basically went through just the stems, listening to everything, and kind of cherry picking exactly what I wanted from it. And it was basically the vocals and some of the vocal effects sort of stuff. The synths I wanted to kind of make my own sounds with. I did like them in the original, but the way that I was going to sort of recontextualize it, just didn't. I tried to put some in, it just didn't seem to work. So it's mainly the vocals that I've cherry picked out, and then I've built the remix around that. And then in terms of the first steps, basically you've got this drum channel here, and this is a kit that I'd actually made for another track I was making, which sort of fell by the wayside, and then as this sometimes can happen. And then, so I used that to kind of write the initial beat underneath.
What's the BPM of this?
It's 130.
Is that was it like double the original or something? Or?
Yeah, the original is very slow. So the thing, one of the niggles I was talking about earlier was kind of fitting the syllables of the because I mean if you just whack it in and you speed it up, because obviously in Ableton you can get things to warp automatically. It sounded just completely unnatural. That was one of the most difficult technical parts of it. Just painstakingly moving each syllable so that it doesn't sound too weird, especially in some of the more busy sort of vocal parts, like these bits where in the original they're so slow, but as soon as you speed them up, they can sound quite clumsy. So kind of getting them all in the right position was one of the challenges. But yeah, it's kind of started with the beat really, and I think kind of polishing it off at the end by just kind of offsetting everything a little bit, so nothing's kind of perfectly on the grid. And then after that, in terms of how the first sort of section came about.
Is that how you normally work, doing the drums first?
Yeah, I would normally write my beat first, probably in session view, and then I would write kind of what I would imagine would be the peak of the track, and then once I'm happy with that, then I deconstruct it in the arrange view. So you kind of almost make like a 16-bar loop, say, and that's where your drop's going to be, your second drop's going to be, and then you deconstruct it and you reverse engineer it sort of from there. Or that's how I tend to like doing it. I don't like staying in session view for too long, because I think you can get stuck in the loop and just sort of go round and round and end up over adding stuff. So I tried to drag it into arrange view as soon as I could, and then in terms of writing the parts around it, basically I just looped and filtered down quite a lot. Let me just bring up the channel. and got some automation here on the filter opening up for the intro and stuff like that. And I just looped that round and then slowly started writing this Rhodes part underneath, which.
That Rhodes, that's my favourite bit.
Yeah, that's
beautiful.
That was where it all sort of came together, and using this little Rhodes plugin, which is absolutely great. Especially it's got this like noise generator on it, and it like sort of provides the crackle that you hear in the Rhodes as well.
It sounds very charming.
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 I like that. And then yeah, sort of looped that around, and then kept on playing different chords underneath, different sort of passing notes and stuff. And
do you have like a really solid understanding of music theory, or is that kind of?
I don't have like in terms of reading it. No,
Right.
I can't read music. I can play by ear.
Okay.
But yeah, it's in terms of like theory of how chords relate to each other. Yeah, from just playing so much. Yeah, I've got like a fairly good understanding of it. But yeah, not in terms of like reading music. Like if someone said, "Can you transpose this?" It'd be a nightmare. Unless I had like 2 months to do it.
Don't worry, no one's gonna ask you to do that.
So yeah, that was sort of the Rhodes part came in, and then I guess after that, moving into sort of recording the guitar bits on top, which I'll kind of play, and I'll just play them in isolation actually. So I sort of wanted something to come in kind of with everything that would sort of just lift it as a second, kind of as like an added structural element on top. So I recorded just the main line here, and then I sort of just harmonized with myself basically. So got an octave, a third, low fifth, and then a high fifth, and then all together you've got a sort of harmonized guitar part that sits on top of everything. And then
I mean, did that, you know, the keys and the guitar, did those parts come to you really quickly and easily, or you know, are you sitting there for hours like playing around with stuff?
I think they come easily when I tend to write stuff.
Yeah.
But I think the difficult bit is knowing when to stop and when you're happy with it. And usually, more often than not, it's the first thing you record.
Always the way.
And like, so I like never. I kind of tend to loop sections if I'm kind of doing something like this, and then I'll record everything over and keep on overwriting it. So that way, I kind of don't get too precious about it.
Yeah.
And then when you've hit it, and you can you've got a solid take, and then you can build around that part. So I think being critical of yourself and not being too precious about certain parts is really good. It comes fairly naturally. I think just going with your first instinct rather than like over-analyzing it and over panicking and stuff like that is a good thing.
Yeah.
And then kind of, I think I'd maybe sent you through sort of actually a bit of a draft.
Yeah.
And on your advice, there's something here that was actually quite low in the mix.
Oh, that's right. And I said, crank it up, didn't
Crank
I?
it up, yeah. This vocal hook here, which is some of the more processed vocals that were on the stems.
Oh, those ones, yeah.
Yeah, and for this, I wouldn't normally do it like this, but I set it up as a drum rack. So you've got the two samples, and they're panned like left and right as well. So you've got slightly different sections of it with different processing on them in sampler as well. And yeah, that sort of sits in context with the whole thing, and filters in and out throughout the track. So it's like either at the forefront being like the main hook, or being like more subdued, like the second sort of droppy bit. They're kind of sitting there, but they're just sort of filtered out quite a lot. So the kind of things come out in and out. So I found it quite easy to arrange because you can sort of bring elements in and out and drop things in and filter bits out, but have them still there, kind of humming away in the background. And then that's kind of the main elements really, is the guitar, the Rhodes, and there's this synth as well, which sort of is a patch that I made in Massive.
Okay.
And it's basically just a bunch of slightly detuned sawtooths, and then you've got a scream filter here, then some of the inbuilt chorus and reverb processing as well. And I think a lot of the, as you can hear, it's sort of pumping with the kick, and a lot of the stuff in the track is doing that same thing. So it adds this whole sort of sense of movement to everything, but in like a unified way. And then I'm trying to think what else. That's really the main sort of bits. In terms of there's this sort of second bit where the other vocal parts come in, and there's a very low in the mix. There's this so I just transposed, because there's not actually that many harmonies in the original stems. But sort of transposed sections of AMANI's vocal, and they actually sound terrible in isolation. not AMANI's vocal performance, but because I've chipmunked them, and they sound a bit ridiculous. And when I was like doing it, I was like, oh, is that a good idea? But then I just like turned it down, and then it adds a sort of airy texture to everything, because the main vocal actually throughout has some sort of low pass filter on it. So that's why it sounds, because I quite like that sort of soft, warm sort of sound you get from kind of low pass filtering stuff. So it's not too like brash, but then on this transposed one, filters are all off, and that just adds that sense of airiness on top, even though it does sound like Alvin and the Chipmunks. And then, yeah, other little vocal sort of hooks. This is like super low in the mix. You can hear it more at the end. I'll just illustrate that. But yeah, I didn't go too crazy on, I kind of wanted the vocal to speak for itself, so I didn't want to over process it or over kind of mess with it, because it's such a sort of beautiful original track. And I'm trying to think what else. And there's this sort of breathy, I mean the channel's literally just called breath, but it's just this sort of breathy, reverby thing that sits at the bottom throughout pretty much the entire track. Okay. Just for some like added ambience. Yeah. And then these two channels at the bottom are just some like noise sweeps, just to accentuate the build-ups and the drops and things like that. And I think that's kind of the majority of the track and how it all sits together.
I think Indie Shuffle compared you to Bonobo, didn't they?
They did. I was very chuffed with that. Yeah, that was awesome.
And so what about your mixing process? Like, how are you mixing as you go, or do you leave most of that until the end? Is that a part of it that you enjoy, or?
I did, yeah. I used to really shy away from that sort of stuff, and I think that's one of the main things I wanted to learn coming to Point Blank. Something I wasn't well versed in, and something like you feel like you can train your ear by watching videos, but I think being around loads of like-minded people and having someone to tell you the absolute do's and don'ts, it really helped with me kind of separating the process as well. So I used to kind of like write whilst I was doing the sound design and whilst I was arranging and mixing all at the same time. My workflow was very, not always confused. I need to just be disciplined with myself. But then having been here, I kind of separate each stage. So, you know, sound design stage, finding all the stems that I want in this example, and then working and processing them until you're happy with them. So you've got your palette of sounds, and then, you know, then beginning writing. And then once you've written it, then start arranging and then start mixing. So before it was just like, all over the shop. So I think in terms of the mixing on this, I think in terms of, there's this kind of sort of standard stuff like compression on all the drums and things like that. There's quite a lot of saturation as well. I didn't use anything too fancy. I just used a lot of the native Ableton processing units, as you can see. So yeah, the native EQ to make all the drums sort of sit well together. And then really the bit that I had the most fun with and the bit that I've really come to enjoy in mixing is sort of all the sends that I've got here. So I really love in the music that I listen to hearing like WFX, like, you know, a huge reverb coming in to accentuate like a build up to something, or, you know, a long delay in, like, if you listen to like a dub record or something, it would just like echo and then like kind of keep the groove going from what you've heard before and stuff like that. So I've got loads of different sends set up. The first two are kind of just modulations of the standard reverb and delay you get when you open up Ableton, the A and B sends. And then after that, there's this sort of quite tight and quite precisely EQ'd reverb, which is kind of, I think it's like all the way up to the max on something like the clap. So you can hear, ooh, oh, it's going to be annoying. Yeah, so it's just sort of to give it a sense of space. And then the more sort of fun stuff, or the stuff that I find a bit more fun, is had this really long reverb using this Lexicon plugin. You can see like the reverb time is like maxed out all the way. So I find it was a really kind of easy or just fun way to add like ambience to the track. So you've got this ridiculously long reverb here, and it's EQ'd, so you're not muddying up any of the low end with anything. And then on top of that, side chaining it. So if you listen to it in isolation for, say, just one of the main sections, then you can hear that it's pumping with the kick. But so you've got all the ambience there, but it gets out of the way of the kick, and you've got the EQ doing the work of not muddying up the low end as well. So, and that's something that also gets dialed in with, you can see all these sort of automation points on all these channels. So that's something I dial in for like build-ups and stuff like that. And then what other sounds do we have here? And then we've got like some parallel compression going on with also some overdrive as well. And that sort of adds, I mean, alone it sounds a bit ridiculous, but it's like adding like a quite sort of high-end, saturated, gritty sort of thing that lifts all of, in particular the drums. You can see how it's accentuating all of those bits. And this is doing a similar thing, but just actually move it to the channel. That's got the like native amp thing from Ableton. Again, just to add some overdrive, but this one isn't so severely EQ'd. And then these other bits kind of get dialed in at certain points, but the super dubby, like really spacey delays and stuff like that. So that's a bit I really have fun with. In terms of on the individual channels, there's quite a lot of filtering going on, especially with the vocals that sort of filter in and out at main points. I had quite a lot of fun mixing the guitars. Basically, what I've done is if you kind of go through the EQing on each one, you can just see down here that it will change. So you've got the root you've got rid of just the main bit of low end, and then as you go through, you've got like the octave sitting in its own sort of frequency space, and then similarly for the third. So everything's got its own sort of space, and nothing's kind of clashing too much with each other. And then on top of that, I'm panning them as well to give them some stereo width. So you've got all this guitar sitting in their own place respectively, but then they kind of, when they come all together, it just made it sound bigger for me. So that was something I quite enjoyed doing. But yeah, in all the other sort of parts, they sort of more standard mixing processes, but those are the bits I had lots of fun with.
Amazing. And we've got you working on a new remix, don't we?
Yes. Yeah, which I think spring next year?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, another one of those, and I'm looking forward to.
And also you won the Fred P remix competition.
Yes.
So is this going to be your first vinyl release?
It will be, and I can't believe it's on the same bit of vinyl as Fred P. So
it's mental, isn't it?
Yeah, it's awesome. So yeah, I think that's going to be in the spring. I can't wait. I think it's the first record on his new label, so
it is.
Very cool. Very
amazing.
Cool. Looking forward to it a lot.
No, your remix really stood out. It was amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it was fun to do, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in.
That's all right.
Best of luck with everything in the future.
Thank you for having me.
The legend that is Kells.
I don't know about that.
And if you would like to learn more about music production, mixing, or sound engineering, you can head to our website, pointblankmusicschool.com, where you can find out more about our courses. And have a good weekend. We'll see you soon.